please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act and conducts business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed against the wall somewhere?
Actually, because there was an emergency change in the Open Meetings Act, there's a copy here by Tim.
So if you'd like to review the Open Meetings Law, Tim has it.
You're not afraid of attorneys.
We also have disclosure of the recording processes.
We are recording.
Okay, because we are recording. If you do wish to speak, just indicate it and we will call on you at the appropriate time. We do have a sign-in sheet for those wishing to speak to the council this evening. You'd be asked to state your name and address for the clerk's record and limit your remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Jonathan Milken. Present. Ellen Beck. Sid Camprith.
Here.
Jessica Colterman. Here. Carl Miller.
Here.
John Singleton. Chris Schmidt.
Here.
Alyssa Hendricks. Here.
All right. Reorganization, does that mean something?
Nope.
Okay, it's done. Draft minutes of April 6, 2021.
Ellen, either spot.
You have the draft minutes of April 6, 2021.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second.
Mayor, just for purposes of, so Mindy can hear, I'm going to do like we did on the Zoom meeting where I'll call out who moved and who seconded.
Okay, sounds
So,
good.
motion by Schmidt, second by Hendricks.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Wilken.
Yes.
Camprith.
Yes.
Colterman. Yes. Miller.
Yes.
Schmidt.
Yes.
Hendricks. Yes.
And Beck, Beck is also here.
Got it.
All right, the next 5 items make up this evening's consent agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Wilkins, second by Schmidt.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Wilken.
Yes.
Beck. Camprith.
Yes.
Colterman. Yes. Miller.
Yes.
Schmidt.
Yes.
Hendricks. Yes.
All right, we do not have any appointments this evening. We do have a public hearing at 7 p.m. Public hearing concerning the existing CDBG downtown revitalization grant. Greg, do you want to start this?
Yeah, we have Tom on hand. Clear in the back here. This is our formal requirement pursuant to any CDBG grant. You do a project opening and a project closing hearing. And so this is the project closeout in regards to all funds are accounted for. They may not be dispersed, but we're not giving anybody out to anybody else new. And so we're ready to have project closeout. It's kind of a formality if anybody comes to talk about it. Obviously, Tom's here and he can share anything else. I can answer any questions you have. Ultimately, I think it was a successful program. We had a lot of projects that got completed and off the ground with it. We learned a lot of things that we'll do differently on the next round. The hope is that there is a next round. I think me and Jonathan were talking just this afternoon that we'll probably do some prep work and discuss with the council what you want to do for your downtown revitalization project. And then if we do the same kind of program with some tweaks, hopefully, we'll get letters of interest and things like that to go with our application so we can tee people up really quickly. And then reapply in August or September is when Tom thinks they'll open that back up for the next round. But we can answer any specific questions you have. I will turn it over to Tom. Tom, if you want to introduce yourself and address real quick.
Yeah, thanks for including me on your agenda tonight. My name is Tom Bliss. I'm with Southeast Nebraska Development District. You guys did a great job on, this would be the second phase of your downtown revitalization project. Phase 1 was the planning phase. You guys might remember that. Phase 2 is implementation. So that's what Greg was discussing. If you do a second round of implementation, that would be phase 3. Greg mentioned late summer, early fall, they still haven't identified or told us what due dates would be, but yeah, you're exactly right. If you are interested in doing that, now is your time to maybe revisit your guidelines. Now is the time to start collecting pre-applications. We anticipate this is going to be a very competitive round this year. So you guys are in a really good position to apply for a second round. Greg said you spent out all your money, you actually exceeded what you anticipated on providing local match, so that was a good thing in regards to maybe applying for a second phase of implementation. So, any questions? Happy to try to answer them.
Any questions for Tom? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. It is a public hearing, so I'll open up the public comment portion of the public hearing. Anyone from the public wishes to comment on this item, this is your opportunity to do so. Not all at once, one at a time. Seeing none, then I'll close the public comment portion of the public hearing and return to Greg. Is there anything else, Greg?
No.
Okay, thank you, Greg. There's no action that's required on this item, correct, Greg?
Correct.
So unless there's anything else from the council, we'll move on to the next item. Seeing nothing, all right. Next item, under administrative items, is a presentation by Seward Wellness Center Committee, and you is here this evening, welcome. Get out of the way.
Where should I stand?
Not perfect.
Like, up here, on the back side, Matt and I are,
You can sit wherever you want to be.
That is perfect, right
That's fine.
there.
Go to display settings,
Whoa.
display settings, in the middle, and click
Greg said he knew what he was doing.
Swap.
Okay. So I am Jana Hughes, and
And I'm Matt Dominy. I'm part of this committee with Jana, and I'm also Director of Curriculum and Staff Development for Seward Public Schools.
I am, on the Seward School Board and teach wellness classes at the Fallbrook YMCA. So we're here to talk to the city of Seward and about a possible Seward County, or Seward Wellness Center. And, go ahead, Greg. Why do we want a Seward Wellness Center? So, about a little over a year ago, the city of Seward got a grant through Four Corners Health Department from the state of Nebraska, and it was specific to getting kids aged 6 to 17 more active. This group, we called ourselves Active People Healthy Seward, and we held a summit last summer. Of course, it was supposed to be in person, and then COVID hit, and so it was a virtual summit. But out of that summit, there were 3 initiatives that came through, and I believe your second agenda item is one of the, yeah, okay, so we're talking about 2 of the 3 initiatives from Active People Healthy Seward. So one is trail activities, which you're gonna hear more after us, and 2 was getting equipment to borrow from the city of Seward through the library, and we are in the process of getting 4 kayaks, life jackets, and paddles that people can borrow for free from the city of Seward and use for the weekend or week or whatever. The third initiative that came out of the Active People Healthy Seward Summit, by far that had the most interest, was getting a wellness center built. And we, through the Active People Healthy Seward, we did a social media survey, and over 300 people participated, and out of that we got some information on what they would want to see in a wellness center. So, wellness center came out top priority with Active People Healthy Seward Summit. The SCCDP has also identified a Seward Wellness Center as one of their top 5 priorities. And in addition, the Seward Public Schools redid their strategic plan a couple of years ago, and part of their plan is focusing on mental and physical health, making that a priority for the staff and the students, and so a wellness center would fit under that umbrella as well.
I think we want to recognize Chris Blonke from.
Oh yeah, Chris Blonke is here from Four Corners, and she,
They
yeah.
applied for the grant, so
Yeah.
secured that for us in our community, and we're just very thankful for that.
Yeah, we've done some neat things with it so far, so. So what are we talking about when we talk about a wellness center? we want a multi-generational facility. This is not, I know the Active People Healthy Seward had that kind of window of 7 to 8, or age 6 to 17-year-olds, but a wellness center for Seward would be definitely multi-generational, from youth to the elderly would be able to use the facility. In addition, in this wellness center, we would house the youth center. The youth center was shut down, the one by the old middle school, several years ago. They sold the building. They have some funds there, and they would use those funds toward helping build this wellness center. And then the youth center would be housed inside the wellness center. In addition, we would provide before and after school childcare for elementary aged kids at the wellness center. And of course, being a wellness center, there's access to fitness and athletic equipment for the community. So where are we at with any funds that we have now? So like I mentioned, we had the Active People Healthy Seward Summit, and through that we have up to $10,000 to use for planning purposes for a wellness center. And in addition, we received about a month ago a grant through the Civic and Community Center Financing Fund. And we did a joint grant application with the city of Staplehurst, and we got funds, and we have up to $11,250 there also to use for planning. The nice thing I want to mention with this, the bottom grant, the $11,250, we've got that planning grant. That, since we've received that, that gives us a foot in the door to possibly get a building grant from that same group further on down the road, and that can be up to $500,000. So it was nice we received this planning one, because that gives us a future for possible other funds from them. Okay? What will be included in the Wellness Center? So like I said, that Active People Healthy Seward Summit, we did a survey and we kind of prioritized all the things that the people of Seward wanted to see in a wellness center. So what we've come up with is 2 competition basketball courts, which then can also be a volleyball court, pickleball courts, 6 lanes of an indoor pool, an indoor walking and jogging track that would go around the top of the 2 basketball courts. Like I mentioned before, the youth center would be housed in the building. We would have cardio and strength equipment, a couple exercise studios, multi-purpose rooms, and a small child watch for people if they came to work out. Their kiddos could be in there while they're working out. One thing to mention with all of this, we are going to make this very multi-purpose. We want it to serve a lot of people. So for example, we've had the youth wrestling program come talk to us, and they would love a room, maybe that have mats out, that their wrestling program can practice in there. Well, if we have a room with mats, that can be a yoga studio, that can have little climbing things on the wall for kids to go. We're going to really do all that we can to make every space very multi-purpose, so that we're being very economical with what we do, and that it serves a wide variety of people.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that over 300 citizens contributed to the survey, and we used that information to determine what the priorities were. And also add that the 2 competition basketball courts can be split in half, so that there's 4 courts available for those activities.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. There's just a few pictures, not of for sure what we're going to do, but just give you a little bit of an idea. So again, this is not what it would look like. This just shows that all those things we mentioned could be done in a 45,000 square foot 2-story building. 2 courts, we got a swimming pool, we have family changing rooms, big locker rooms, check-in areas, child watch, the youth center space, multi-purpose space. That would be, and again, things can switch, but this just gives us, we know we can do this with a 45,000 square foot building. Okay, next slide. This would be like a second level, open to the pool. That would be kind of enclosed, because with pools and the humidity, etc. To the right would be the walking track around the 2 courts, and then the potential room for the exercise studios, cardio equipment, fitness equipment, etc. So that just shows we can do it in a rectangle, 45,000 square feet, 2-story. Okay, next. So just to give you an idea of what the exterior could look like, this is a facility that was done in Papillion. It's an indoor, like a field house, soccer field house. Just kind of the type of structure. You can do different things with elevation, bumping out walls, so it won't be just a big, Morton building rectangle. We can add some dimension to it. A lot of windows, things like that. Next, this is a same facility front on view. Next.
We talked about
Oh.
the mixed construction, so having the metal building also with the more of the cement siding, those types of things, to add those different effects, but keep things more affordable by using that mixed use.
And we want very cost-effective, maintenance-free, can handle, you know, quality, people in it, et cetera. If you go to the next slide, this just kind of shows some possible interior finishings that we could do. Go ahead, go to the next, like polished cement floors. I think the next one is, yeah, this is just a rendering of a gym with kind of what that jogging space around the upper level looks like. We would have 2 courts. Go ahead. Okay, so where do we want this facility? We are planning, we would love to have a 5-acre site, and 5 acres, the building, the drawing we showed you could be done on a 3.2-acre site, parking and everything. I got like a gnat. Sorry. Ideally, though, we would have a 5-acre site because we could have the potential for maybe a phase 2 expansion. One thing that did come out of the summit was people would like to see perhaps like an indoor field house, like a soccer field house, and that, we've decided that is phase 2. We want to get the things we mentioned built, and then there'd be an option, if we were on a 5-acre site, we would have the option of expansion at a future date. If it gets built on a 3.2-acre site, we get what we get, and there won't be a phase 2. We want it located near the middle school, and the reason for that is, which I know you're going to hear about the second, but we know this trail will be finished all the way around Seward, so anyone in Seward can jump on the trail and safely get to the facility without, you know, kids or whatever could ride their bikes and get to the facility without having to cross major roads because they can take the trail. We want it, with it being by the middle school, you're walking distance of all the schools, Catholic and St. John as well. And with us having the before and after school programs, we need to be by the school so that, you know, I work at Hughes Brothers, I drop my kids off at 6:45 at the Wellness Center, and then at 7:45 they walk them across the street to the middle school, they jump on the bus, they ride down to the elementary, and then vice versa in the afternoon, they can ride the bus to the middle school, hop off, and get to the before and after school childcare. So we really feel like this is the right location for it, which would be up by the middle school. What are we looking at budget-wise? We are looking at anywhere from 8 to 10 million. What we've shown you can be built for 8 to 10 million. The difference in price kind of depends on the site that we end up settling on. If we're on the bigger site, we might need to bring a little more infrastructure and more park. There might not be some shared parking and things like that. Next. Our fundraising plan. That is why we're here. We are looking at, we would like to raise 2 to 3 million locally through private donors, getting sponsorships, pledges. If we can secure those funds, that lends us to getting $2 to $3 million of funds through private foundations and grants, similar to like what I mentioned before, the CCCFF grant. And then we are asking to partner, do a public-private partnership with the city, and the other half of the building come from the city. Then the big question too is who operates it. We would love to see a city-run wellness center, similar size locations that have city-run buildings, or city-run wellness centers are Papillion, Wayne, Hickman, and Gretna, to name a few. If that is not an option, then we can get a nonprofit, kind of hire a management firm to come in, such as an Exos that can run it, and you would have a board that would oversee the wellness center, and then hiring a company that would come run it.
Jana, would this be an appropriate time, because I know.
I think we can ask questions.
There's a
Yes.
question I'm sure that maybe some of the council members know, or the mayor, or the administration. But one of the first questions that comes out when we talk about operations is, based on the slide, well, why not the YMCA?
That is a really good question, Greg. Thanks for asking. The YMCA will not come here. We have gone down that path. We went down it a couple of years ago. The Lincoln, we are in the jurisdiction of the Lincoln YMCA, and we are too close to the one I work at in Fallbrook, and they will not add Seward as a YMCA. So the YMCA is off the table. It would be wonderful to have for brand recognition, to bring programs, but it is not an option at this time. So, or at any time. It's
Yeah,
not an option.
it's not an option both from the Lincoln perspective with the Lincoln YMCA and the
And
group.
we asked
Yeah,
Columbus.
the group that
and-
met a few years ago, that included a lot of people in this room actually. We also met with Columbus and more outstate YMCA's, and they also said that one, Lincoln would have to release you, and two, from what we hear from national, we wouldn't take you on anyway. So the YMCA is, we went all the way down the road with them and tried to get as far as we could, but at the end of the day, we found out they would not come here for a facility. Anything else? Keep moving?
Oh, yeah, okay. So our ask for today is possibly to use the non-use tax authority that Seward has. We're currently sitting at 7%. Consider moving it to 7.5% sales tax. An interlocal agreement would have to be made with either the county or the school with the wellness center. And by doing so, to do this tax authority, it would go to a vote of the citizens of Seward. And honestly, we want the vote of the citizens of Seward. We want to see that we have the people of Seward backing it. And if they are not backing it, we're done. This is gonna be put to rest. We're not gonna build it, so. And then the other ask is if the city would be interested in owning and operating it, similar with the pool or the library.
Again, since we have all these wonderful people here tonight, I'll fill in a few more details on some of these questions that the committee's asked about. And we'll be looking for input from the city council and the citizenry. The additional ask on the sales tax is an interlocal authority that the state legislature gave us a number of years ago that now York and David City and maybe Crete and Beatrice and the city of Lincoln have all utilized and passed voter-approved sales tax increases to cover projects like new fire stations, police stations, pools, you kind of name it. The only requirement is that you join in an interlocal with another governing entity. And that's why we mentioned the county or the school would be a good partner for that potentially, looking at this sort of project. But you would have to have an interlocal agreement. The school or the county wouldn't have to be on the hook for anything. They would just somehow have to be a partner in it. The details of what would be available are kind of the sky's the limit. There is no limit to how long it could run. You could limit it to a number of years. You could limit it to an amount of money that could be raised, and then it would shut itself or sunset itself down. And then again, it has to be approved by a vote of the citizens of Seward. And so really, that is one of the most critical parts. And so those are kind of some of the details of some of those asks. And so we're excited all the work that everyone's done, and by knowing some of these things and starting to shake these things out now, that's really going to guide these planning grants that have been secured and help guide forward what budgets look like and how much money is actually available. Because if we find out there's $20 million available, that's a lot different than 10 or 8 or 7. And so they need to know the direction they're going and what the planning is for this to kind of set those grants up to move in the direction they need to move and be utilized in the correct manner. And so there's no formal, just before we turn it over to the council area, there's no formal action or request tonight. This is the presentation of the findings, the planning grants that are available, and where we would like the council to potentially begin a conversation to move these things along in the future.
Yeah, we did do a sales tax increase almost 10 years ago, and that was for our LB 840 program, which benefits local businesses, and part of that half-cent went from 6.5 to 7 was to put more money into that program, but also then to lower property taxes. And so we actually have one of the lowest property tax levies in the state of Nebraska as a result of that. And part of the reason why sales tax tends to be more attractive than property tax is just because, you know, we have a lot of people coming through Seward. The 4th of July usually is a big celebration for people to come in and spend money, and you're able then to collect the sales tax on people who are coming into Seward who may not live in Seward, as a way to kind of spread that burden around, so you don't hit the same property tax owners, yeah, as you normally would. But it's something to think about. I know when we had this discussion 10 years ago, one of the concerns was, well, if you raise the sales tax, does that put businesses at a disadvantage compared to neighboring communities? But I've yet to find anyone who can tell me what the sales tax is in neighboring communities. So it's not necessarily something that people think about. I mean, if you're gonna drive to Lincoln and spend gas money to buy, you know, go to Costco, you're not really thinking about what's the property, what's the sales tax rate is in Lincoln. So if, in case that's something you were thinking about, it, we discussed that 10 years ago, and it really was a non-issue for the most part. But people do know what their property taxes are. Yeah, Greg.
The other thing that happened within the last year also that makes sales tax a potential option is that nationally they moved to implementing sales tax on all online purchases as well. So that's been a big driver of increased sales tax. We're not exactly sure on the number, because as soon as that implemented at the beginning of 2020, COVID hit shortly afterwards, and everybody went to their house and started ordering a bunch of stuff, and weren't making some of these trips to Lincoln or other communities that they were normally doing. And so we're not exactly sure, but we know there is an increase, that we're gonna see an increase in sales tax from where we were just a few years ago. But we don't wanna make like definitive statements about it yet, because COVID kind of knocked us out of whack, and so we don't wanna rely on those numbers. So if we did give projections and things like that to try and back these bonds, we would also give a very conservative projection that we may be surprised on what we actually get ultimately. But there's no good solid numbers, and there probably won't be for the next year or so, until people get right, you know, hopefully get back into the normalcy of spending habits.
And Greg, we would most likely need a special election for this, right?
Well, it depends on timing. I think the committee's preference is to continue to strike while the iron's hot with these planning grants in place. These grants need to move, planning needs to begin.
Because the regular election wouldn't be till next May, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we would love to see something maybe by this fall if you would approve it.
And Janet, you could do a mail.
Yeah.
election.
And we would pay for that.
The county dictates that, and they basically have decided that they're gonna, because ours had to be, when we did 10 years ago, was like the first, they just changed the law. It was like the first mail-in election we'd ever done here, so we were a little nervous because we didn't have a whole lot of models to look at and say, well, here's what the voter turnout's gonna be. We hadn't done it before, so yeah, they'll dictate, and they would prefer, I think, unless it's changed, unless they change your policy.
What is your ideal timeline on this?
I guess, we're thinking fall for the vote, if you would approve it, and then kind of our plan, the committee's plan is when we hear that, yes, you guys will send it to a vote, then we will go to our potential partners for sites, and then figure out exactly which site it will be. Then we can proceed with, there'll be a couple groups. One group will go start doing the private fundraising and ask for pledges, because if the vote doesn't pass, we're done. So we would ask for pledges. Another group would work on getting the vote out and sharing the information to the public, so that when they do vote in the fall, they know what they're voting, hopefully for, and we'll get a lot of people to vote. And then a third group would actually start the actual planning of the facility, so that if we do get it passed and we have the funds, we can start as soon as possible. Does that answer your question?
So like in 2 years, hopefully the break ground is
Oh,
ideal.
gosh, if we could break ground this winter, early spring would be amazing. I'm confident. I'm optimistic and confident that we can do this, but we
Correct.
won't do it till we have the funds.
Right, but ideally, if it does and everything moves and it
Yes,
changes that
we
you
would just
want
do
it
it as
to,
soon as we
you're
can.
like, hey,
Yes.
if we can get our ducks in a row.
We can get our ducks in
In
a
2 years,
row.
we'd like to have this.
Have it done, have it
Literally
built.
up and running and
Yes.
full functioning.
Yep.
Is there a fundraising threshold that you feel like we have to meet if the sales tax were to be passed and approved by the board?
Like before it would go to the vote, or what do you mean?
No, I just mean like in general, is there a threshold of where you feel like we need to raise X number of private dollars to move forward with it, or regardless of what?
I think we would need to raise the 2 to 3 million
Yeah.
to be able to go forward with it. Should we do that? Yeah. I think that's where I'm.
Greg, so
Oh.
if it goes to vote, it's passed, how does that tax get implemented? I mean, do we set a date on the vote on when it goes into play?
Yeah.
And then
You could-
obviously, we talked about bonding against those future revenues. And.
If you're looking to fall, you might look at, just for ease of use, January 1. You know, matches the tax year, at least in regards to taxpayers. And so have it go into effect January 1 of next year. And then it would be dependent upon how you stylize it. If you say we're gonna run it for 10 years, 5 years, $4 million, $5 million of revenue, and then shut it down. I mean, you can, that's some of the discussions the council will have to have in helping organize what this may look like if you choose to even entertain this. So,
And I think that comes down to the last item on there, and Adam sitting over there, you know, if the city's gonna run this, what's it gonna cost us to run it?
and that, I know there was a lot of work done by the previous group that I met with starting in 2017, that they did have,
There's an
budgets,
operating
operating
plan
budgets put
from
together.
2018 that I've seen from the past try, with numbers in it. I mean, and of course, we would wanna revisit that today, but it kinda shows us a break even.
Did you just wink? I think she winked. I saw that too.
I'm gonna go back to something Josh asked, sorry, or Mayor asked.
Josh is fine.
See, now I'm all flustered, now I'm gonna be red. Okay, sorry. We do right now have $850,000 solid, with the youth center money from the sale of their building, and then we haven't even really approached donors yet, but we have one on the line, and so we have $850,000 right now to start with our private donors.
The only reason why I'd asked that was if there was a threshold that you felt you needed to reach with private donations, or you wouldn't go forward with the project. If this were to pass and we're collecting sales tax for a
And then we
specific
never get
purpose,
that amount
and then you
from
don't go
private.
through with the project, then we have a pile of money
That you,
we
it's
can't
earmarked for
cut.
something that you can't do.
Right, and this happened in another community
Okay,
before. So that's the only reason why I asked, if there was like a fail switch point where you would say, okay, we're not gonna go forward with it, we need to make sure we're careful on how we word this so we don't
yeah,
snooker
would it be
ourselves
something
in that way.
that the tax would only go in, maybe the timing of it would be the tax would only start
But if
kicking
you're
in
confident
when.
you're gonna do it no matter
No,
what.
I know, now I'm like, not back, okay, back.
here's what I would say, is that when we get into those discussions, if the council wants to entertain this further and begin these discussions, that's something we sit down when we sit down and discuss the timeline, how many years it would run, what the financial amount would be. I know one of the discussions that we've had with the committee, and Chris has helped with this committee, is do we run it for a given number of years, and if after, you do 10 years and after 6 years you hit your 5 million, well, do you run it for the additional 4 years and then use that as foundational money to help, cover costs in the future? Do you use it in a whole different set of ways to help the facility out? Or do you sunset it? And I think that we can have a whole nother night of just those conversations, and I think if this is something we want to continue to move forward, we should start teeing up those agenda items this spring and summer to get them going.
Yeah, I think tonight it's just important that, one, the public's brought into this conversation in general, but also, if the council absolutely felt like the sales tax is a non-starter, I think the group needs to know that tonight, and they can stop, pushing forward on this. I don't get that sense, but those were kind of the two main, I felt the two main goals for this evening, is that fair?
Yes. Yeah, we're not expecting an answer tonight.
But you take one. if it's
We, oh,
not-
sure, we
Yeah,
take one,
yeah.
Greg, can I ask a question? And I'm not sure that this is a conversation obviously going forward, but my thought is, we own the golf course assets of the land. And we own the swimming pool, and the city runs it, and we have our say. And this is a public-private thing, and yet it's city tax dollars, sales tax dollars going toward it. How much say do we, as council, or the city overall, have in the running of it, in the making of a major decision?
Most likely, under the model we have right now, barring what you do with the interlocal, you would have all the say. You would be the final everything.
So it'll all come back to council?
Yes.
For the actual building.
For the building, how it's run, who's in charge
Because
of
I know
it.
the library was done, the foundation built it and then gifted it
Yep.
to the city. But the foundation paid for all of it,
Yeah.
and this is different because you're paying for half of it. now.
We haven't gotten into the specifics as
Right.
far as that arrangement, but my preference would be, you know, Adam earmuffs, but the rec department would more than likely assume the responsibility like they have the other facilities, and then we would staff it and be responsible for it. And mainly because of the significant tax dollars that are going into it, we probably need to have that level of control. That doesn't mean we can't have, with the Parks and Rec Board that provides input already on our existing facilities, doesn't mean there couldn't be another advisory board or that board expanded, or, you know, there's ways to include public input on something like that, but I don't know why we would pay necessarily another entity to run it if we have the means of doing it ourselves, unless
No, I
they
agree.
felt strongly otherwise.
No, that's not my worry, it's just,
You're talking more on the design.
no, I'm
like,
talking more about on the back end.
Oh, on the back end,
Once
oh.
we're up and running, the year to year, because it's gonna come through the tax dollars, and the city has oversight over that, I just wanted to know exactly what the city would have as far as responsibility and or control over what goes on there.
I think a lot of what we're gonna do is look to operate it similar to a YMCA facility, where we would also look to do some fundraising events and things like that specific to the wellness center. He's not here, but not to be remiss, but at all of our other presentations, Shane Bach talked about the basketball tourney that's been incredibly successful in Seward and Seward County, that they put on.
The youth center activities like the daddy-daughter date
Yep.
night and the the mother-son
Yep.
events, and, yeah.
Is we would look to the staff at this facility, even if they're city staff, to help us design fundraisers, just like we would at any sort of wellness facility that we see in other communities, to direct money directly to the facility, and continue to help with those costs. The other thing that,
That's fine, I'm not so concerned about that, I mean, I think if we're going to go in, we might as well go in all the way and run it like we would consider we do the pool, which is, it's an amenity, our people want it, and we're going to have it in our budget. And as long as we have the control over exactly how, you know, capital expenditures and things going forward, and we can plan for it in the budget, then it's a sound process. But I just didn't know how that would work when you're having so much, you know, public-private investment in it.
I think
at
once
the-
it's running, the private's pulled out.
yeah, there's no,
You're not lifeguarding here?
I don't have my life.
and probably a little bit of discussion for another day, but based on what I think the ask is here, that if it moved forward with everything that was asked, the city's gonna run it and the city's gonna put up the sales tax, that the city's gonna be in full 100% control of the facility.
And the chances of people going bankrupt, owned by a city, operated by a city, is pretty low. If it goes bankrupt, we have much bigger problem. The wellness center.
Other questions? If it's okay, we have some people here, if you are in support with the possible Seward Wellness Center, if you just want to stand up, we don't think we need everybody to say anything, but I thought if everybody could stand up that's here too. They're supporting, you know, helping us out. Hi, thank you guys.
Everyone else just
Chris.
That's until-
You guys are great. If you were part of active people, at least stand up.
He's like,
Oh, yeah, you're like, oh.
It isn't a public hearing, but if anyone from the public would like to speak on this, you're welcome to at this time. Ryan?
Mayor, I just have one question. As far as that sales tax, what, based off of 2020 collections, understanding that might be a little skewed, but what does a half-cent raise for the city of Seward?
we anticipated a half cent might bring us 250,000 plus a year. But we'd have to go back and look. Again, the numbers were skewed last year. We saw a significant increase, like record sales tax last year. And we think it was the combination of COVID and online sales tax.
Right.
And so we would project back to 2019 if we start putting these numbers together, just to be safe. Because we won't know till we're another year through this what normal is. And by then, we'll be hopefully be well into this project. So.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Yes, please stand.
I'll just ask a question, kind of the elephant in the room. To Ellen's remark about on the backside, yes, we have a pool, and it's an amenity that everybody in town likes. I remember last year when COVID started, the discussions around, will the pool open, will it not? And there were discussions around, well, the pool runs at a deficit anyway. Now, do you envision that this might run at a deficit, and how is that going to impact the city's rec budget? Are we looking at maybe running this like a Y, to where you're buying memberships, and you have people that are paying into this for the privilege of using? Now, I think there's some other issues here that we need to flesh out a little bit, and I'm all for this, don't get me wrong. I just was gonna ask that question, because I hadn't heard anybody else address it.
Can I get your name and address, please?
Darryl Zabrocki, 427 South First Street here in Seward.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you want to go?
So it would be by membership. It would be similar, if you're familiar with like YMCA prices, there'd be a family membership, there'd be individual memberships, there'd be youth memberships. So if we do it right, it would be a break even. Because people will ask the question, well, if it's a moneymaker, why doesn't somebody come in and build it? You can't build the building, you can't pay a mortgage and make it break even, but if the building is there, the facility's in place, then operating costs can be covered by memberships and perhaps a few fundraisers and things like that. But it should be a break even. And so it'd be similar, the pool does charge a membership fee, and I know they do lose money, but typically, like a wellness facility will break even with membership costs.
And to be fair, I mean, oftentimes, like the Y in Lincoln, if you're familiar with those organizations, they're fundraising year round. I mean, there are other opportunities to raise money. They have various levels of donations from businesses and others, and I think part of, at least in the past, part of the model for the operation side of it was, would Concordia University, for example, we'd be a partner with their students, so they have a place to go, or do other businesses in town, the hospital, other places, and so there would be a number of what I would call revenue streams potentially coming together to try to cover that. But I think part of that's going to lead into the discussion of how long should the sales tax go for, because with the uncertainty of what those partnerships or relationships would look like, because quite frankly, a lot of people will be excited in year one. I'm more worried about year 21 and 41. Is that interest still going to be there to support that? And so, part of that discussion with the sales tax might be is maybe we don't sunset it, we just give the council the authority to end it when they feel appropriate, and then let it go until the community feels like, okay, we're at a point now where we don't have to continue it, as opposed to having it sunset or stop and then having to go through the process of restarting it if we haven't quite reached whatever that threshold is. Because it is an amenity, and it's not something that we necessarily feel like we have to profit to run, because I always say the city is a terrible business person because we don't make money on anything, you know? But that's because if you could make a lot of money on it, someone in the private sector would already be doing it. And pools are notorious for that, just because of all of the costs associated with that. So there would likely be multiple revenue streams to support it on the operations and maintenance side. But that's gonna take the whole community, you know, coming together. And quite frankly, you know, if this gets established, my hope is that there might be some estate planning opportunities down the road where families might leave gifts, you know, to something like this as part of an estate, you know, planning process. But again, that's down the road, but, you know, the hope is that it's something that the community wants and is willing to pay for. Yes, Josh Fields.
Just to quickly add to that, I think that the before and after school care is a need in our community, and something that was approached from our school board just a year and a half ago, but that is a nice revenue stream where we've talked to others that is something that has been more of a consistent piece where they've been able to generate dollars on a consistent basis for the before and after school care for kids that are school aged.
We visited a YMCA in Holdridge, which is a very similar sized community as ours, and I believe they had 65-ish kids participate in the before and after school childcare. And the gal we talked to said they could easily have more if they would have the space for it. And like Josh said, we did have a group come to us a year and a half. There is a need, and it is a good revenue stream. It's kind of a win-win. It's a win for parents, and then it helps pay for some things at the Wellness Center. And one other thing I wanted to piggyback on just an interesting revenue stream. There has been some talk with like Concordia, so like the football team might come in after hours on a Sunday night and use the swimming pool for an alternative workout during their session, easier on the body, just something different. And so, you know, we could partner with some of these, you know, Concordia or whoever that might rent it out on Sunday nights after it's been closed to use for their kids and things like that. There's a lot of options out there.
Josh Fields, you said your name and address for the record.
Josh Fields, 429 East Pinewood.
Thank you. Greg?
The other option that was really important to the committee, or element of this, is they also want to continue to help generate funds for scholarships and things like that for low-income families. Because again, there's going to be a fee attached to this, but it's being paid for by the community. And so they felt that that was a critical element all the way back into the summit last year, through all the discussions that work will need to be done to help those in the community that otherwise couldn't pay to have a membership, or afford after-school care and things like that. And so looking for a group to help raise funds to generate those kind of scholarships and things like that, so that this is a facility that's available to everyone, and that we're not just putting up barriers to access.
And to be fair, when you were mentioning the YMCA does a lot of fundraising, a lot of that is for their Strong Kids program, which does subsidize memberships for the community.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Could or would it replace the pool?
No.
You state your name and address, please.
Adam Finn, Concordia University, January.
That's not my plan. You
No.
wanted to replace the pool, you just built the pool. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Is there, I'm just thinking, is there a way to get this out more into the community so that we can really see where it's steering, so that it can help us make a decision whether or not I'd hate to spend the time and the money to go ahead and get an election going. Is there like a way that letters can be sent home to the students for a quick survey that way to really show if it's worth moving forward to that step? The people that are in the room here is like nothing compared to what Seward is as a whole. So to be able to get that out, like do like a pre-survey survey?
So like, we were just chatting right here for a second. We maybe could use planning dollars to like do a real, like a Gallup, like a true survey where they, you know, you don't just, because if you just target kids, you're only getting that clientele. Like, we kind of need it
send home
across
to like
the board.
parents to say, hey, parents, we gotta have you fill this out real quick. Boom. Do you want a wellness center, yes or no? Do you want the city to pay for it, yes or no? Do you want the city to run it, yes or no?
And we do
you
have
want to raise
that.
sales
Did
tax,
you-
yes or no?
We did do that, it was a social media survey. Did you, I have copies of that.
Yeah, and I
You guys-
participated in it, and that was
Okay.
great,
Yeah.
but not everybody, if it's multi-generational like
Uh-huh.
that, there's pretty big generation gap that
Right.
doesn't, or now in the
Oh, on
circumstances
social
aren't paying attention to that kind of stuff.
Right.
We did,
So-
we did do a scientific survey 10 years ago, but when we did the last time, and the criticism we got from some people was, well, I never got that survey, no one called me, and I don't know anyone who got called, and they were kind of dismissive of the survey, because that's not how statistics work. So I don't know that we really gain a whole lot from a scientific survey, because if they want to dismiss it, people will dismiss it, but I can tell you at the time, there was a lot of support for it, and it was a countywide survey. The question was all, and that survey also included price points, like how much would you pay for a family membership, how much would you pay for an individual membership, and all that was a part of that. It just kind of comes down to, you know, do you want to increase sales tax to pay for it, and, you know, and how much does the price point that people are willing to pay line up with the price point we would want to charge for it? But ultimately, the election is gonna be your survey. On whether the public supports the project, is willing to use sales tax to do it.
Well, Janet, did I hear you say that your group would help fund the special election?
Right.
Yes. So really, the city wouldn't
No, there's
pay
no
out anything
cost.
in the cost of the election.
I just was wanting to plant seeds. All I wanted to do.
What do you want to do?
Just plant some extra seeds, get it out there.
Oh.
I didn't know if that was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Newspaper's here.
Oh, yeah.
Go
There you
plant
go,
some
get
seeds.
to typing it.
That's the.
Front page.
That's the older generational that will be reading that, so.
We can Snapchat this
Hit that
later,
and
before the kids.
Seward Community Chat, we're covered.
We do have a couple committees that are working on this project, and I think that's good input, what you shared, to talk about and see if there's other avenues to try to get some more input there as far as.
Yeah, or just to have, you know, they got those like take funds or whatever at
Right.
businesses to see how, like, if you really get a lot going to get it talked about, then it's gonna continue to be more successful.
Part of the challenge of having the broader conversation is there's a lot of details that haven't quite been worked out yet. And so easing into this with this group here tonight and others in the public as this moves forward, we'll kind of gradually dip your toe in the water and see what the response is, because immediately the question is it, you know, where the bathrooms are gonna be, where's the basketball court, how big, you know, where's it gonna be located? And so it's good to have like the general concept, it's just really hard to have a very specific conversation to answer specific
Well,
questions.
and if somebody would ask specifically, we're saying near the middle school, we're not saying where, people will be like, well, where is it gonna be? It's gonna be by the middle school, but yeah, but where? That will not be answered